Hey everyone, and welcome to part 13 of the Godot top-down shooter tutorial. In this video, you're going to be working towards having not only capturable bases, but an AI that will advance to the next base once one is captured. So unfortunately, this is a pretty complex feature and it's going to kind of capstone our AI, and so we're not going to be able to fit it all into one video. But this is going to be the end result after part 2. So this will be part 1 and there'll be a part 2 after it. And this is what we have. It's not perfect, but dang it, we have AI that advances to the next base and actually attacks each other. So it's pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited. And I hope this first part will be helpful, and then we'll finish it up in the second part and actually get this result here where we've got AI that are attacking with us and capturing bases as we go. Okay, so before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick note about what we're going to tackle today. So I've gotten a fair amount of people asking about pathfinding and whether that's something we'll cover. And yes, the plan right now is it's absolutely something I want to cover. Today, what we're going to do is actually add an AI state to make our allies and our enemy AI units advance towards the next base. So there will actually be a full gameplay loop where they're trying to capture things with you. We could do pathfinding as part of that, and we're going to need to once we start adding more things on the map to collide with. But for right now, I kind of want to just get something that works, because I think pathfinding is going to be worth devoting a video or two just fully by itself, and I'd rather do that right when we do get to it. So all that to say, for today, even though we're going to be doing something that involves AI movement, I don't think we're actually going to cover real or proper pathfinding. We're just going to have kind of a dumb, just go to, like straight line to your objective kind of method, just because it'll be easier and it'll give us a foundation that we can eventually build pathfinding on top of later on when we get there. So sorry that we won't get to that today, but it definitely is in the plan, and we're going to need to, I think, once we add an actual map and hopefully add props that you can destroy or take cover behind. So with that, we can actually get started. And the first thing I want to do, since we're now going to have more than one base that units can capture, I want to add a camera to our player. So because we're going to need more space than just this right here, we're going to need to add a camera that'll follow the player. And it's super easy to do that in Godot. All I have to do is go to a camera 2D node and I'll add that. And you just have to make it a child of the player, and it'll automatically follow the player. And then make sure you click the current button here, so it'll be the main camera. And then you'll see that now we have this outline around it here, around our player, of where our camera will be. And we'll still get like our screen size outline here, just around our main game area. But, so with this in mind, something else I like to put on is smoothing, just a little bit to make the camera, look a little bit nicer, just as a temporary measure. So now we have a camera that will follow the player around, and you'll see the camera starts a little bit farther up and to the left because of where the player is, but now if I move around, it'll follow me. And you'll see the smoothing is in effect because when I stop, the camera moves for just a few seconds, or just a few moments before it actually catches up. So it just gives a kind of a nicer movement effect for right now. So that's a good first step. And now the next thing I want to do, just in preparation for actually adding our advanced AI state, is add a few more capturable bases. And so with this, well, for now, let's just add a couple more. So, all right, what I'm going to do is just kind of rearrange our map here. So we'll have the first one there. I'll have the second one. I'll go to move mode. Let's put the second one over here, and let's put the third one over here. Okay, so we're not going to do anything with map bounds or anything yet, so you'll have to be a little bit careful about that. But we can do this for now. I'll move our player right here and move our ally 1 there and ally 2 here. And then let's set our enemy, all 3 of them, to be over here. And then just grab our rotate tool and turn them all that way about. Okay. And let's do the same thing just so it's kind of an equal. Okay, and so this will let us test when we start our game and we add our advanced state that the enemies will go and try and capture this base. We'll try and capture this base, and then we will fight it out in the middle to see who wins. And it's going to be a little bit hard to test this fully without a respawn mechanic, and I don't think we're going to get to that today, although we might be able to just put something really simple in. So to be determined still on whether we get to that. But now I think we've got the base stuff ready in order for us to add our advanced state. Okay, so to actually start adding our advanced AI, we're going to need to group our players and our enemy, or sorry, our allies in the player and our enemy and our capturable bases a little bit better to allow them to talk to each other. So one thing I'm going to do is add a node 2D here. And someone had pointed out in a comment that for any time you don't actually need a transform, for something like this, where we're basically making a manager or a data container, you can just use a normal node, and that might save on some compute time because Godot doesn't have to keep track of the transform. And that's totally true. Like a lot of the things we use a node 2D here for, you absolutely could just use a node. It really isn't going to be, unless you have thousands of these, like it's not going to be that big of an issue, but it might be better practice. I tend to use node 2Ds for whenever I can, really, just because, I don't know, for me it feels a little bit more consistent, and oftentimes I do end up having to use those transforms in some way. Maybe that's just a sign of code that could be better, but so all that to say, you could definitely use a node here, but I'm going to call this Capturable Base Container or Manager Act. We'll just call it Manager because it's going to be doing some active managing of things. So we have that, and then I'm also going to add, so we have AI that controls individual units, but we're going to need some sort of AI that knows the map and knows the bases, and it's going to have to control groups of units and tell them, hey, here's your next target. And then each unit is responsible for reacting to that target and to what's around it on its own. But there needs to be some sort of higher level AI that's directing those units. And I think I'm going to call this map AI because it is our map AI that knows where the bases are, where our units need to go. And I think the way I want to set it up is that it is specific to one team. So in our case, we have two teams, so we will need two instances of the same, map AI script running for each team. So I'm going to add another 2D, and I'm going to call this ally map AI. I'm going to duplicate this and say enemy map AI. And so we'll add a map AI script here. And I also, just to make it easier, I think I'm just going to make our allies and enemies children of this node, not our player, I don't think, because it doesn't really need to be. Might change that later, but this way our map AI knows at all times how many units it has spawned, and it can spawn new ones just because it can check how many children it has. And so it'll be a little bit easier for us to write code that does that, and it'll kind of act as our unit container. So whenever we need to spawn new units, our main can just say, hey, do this or whatever. So I think this is going to be the right way to structure it. And now we can actually start adding these scripts and adding our map AI. Okay, so let's add a script to our AI. So I will attach script, and I'm just going to call this map AI. Yeah, I'll just create it in the root directory for right now. And I'm not going to save these off as their own scenes yet. I'm just going to kind of do this on the fly until I feel pretty good about what we have. So I'll add our map AI here. And so we're going to need a way to tell our... So fundamentally, it's one complicated thing is that for our allies, we're starting over here, so we need to indicate that this is the first base, but for our enemies, we need to indicate this is the first base. And one thing we could do is just detect which base is closest to our allies, but that kind of gets kind of complicated because it's like, what if we have an ally here and an ally over here? Like, how do you tell then? So I think just the simple way to do that now is just to, loop through the bases. So our ally AI will know this is the first base, second, and third, and our enemy AI is going to have to know that this is their first base, second, and third, etc. And so we'll just make them attack in a sequential order. So one thing I'm going to do is just like, as a temporary, I'll just do an enum. We will say base capture order, and we will say I don't really know what to call this, like, or base capture start order. I don't know. I'll just say first, and last. And then we'll do exports base capture start order var base capture start order. Okay, and so then now we have a way, so we can say our ally map AI will start at the first base, and then our enemy map AI will start at the last base, and then we can just add handling in our script for what that actually means. And fundamentally what it's going to mean from a programming perspective is I think we're just going to loop through the array for our enemy AI negatively. And by array, I mean we're going to loop through the possible capturable bases. So now that we have that, we can actually start implementing this. So let's actually, so we're also going to need a, let's say var capturable bases, and this will be an array, which will be this. So we're going to need to do some dependency injection here, capturable bases. So I'm just creating a function right now, same as we've done in many other places, called initialize, which will be called from our main scene at the beginning, which will grab all of our capturable bases from our base manager and pass them into our AI so they have a list of bases. So again, this is how we're making siblings communicate with each other. We're just kind of passing in the dependencies it needs at the start so they're not directly tied to each other. So I'll say self.capturable bases equals capturable bases here. And now what we're going to need to do is I will add a script to our capturable base manager called capturable base manager. And here I'm going to just say function get capturable bases, and we're assuming this isn't going to change. Like once the level starts, it's not going to change. So we don't really need any fancy handling here. This will return an array, and we're just going to return get children. So we will assume for now that we're only going to add actual capturable bases as children of our capturable base manager, which I think is a fair assumption. And so what I can do now in our main script to actually wire this through, oh, I love having a main script that is this empty. This to me is a sign of good code in the sense that our main script doesn't actually need to do anything. Like all of our nodes for the most part talk directly to each other. We found ways to work around that. And having code in here isn't bad at all. Totally not. And we're going to need to use that now. But the fact that we've been able to avoid that now for things like individual players and enemies and bullets, stuff that probably doesn't need to be in our main scene, it makes me feel good about what we've got. So that's a cool thing to see. But we will have to add some more things now. So let's add a onReady var, we'll say capturable base manager. I just have this thing where I love typing out the full names of things, just like, because, you know, with autocomplete, it's really easy to type things nowadays. But if you want to call it base manager or CBM, you know, you do you. No judgment there. What am I looking for? I just had a total brain fart. There we go. Capturable base manager. And we'll say onReady var ally, all ally AI, and we will call this ally map AI. Same thing with our enemy. All right, we'll do enemy map AI and enemy AI. Okay, so now what we can do is we can say var bases equals capturable base manager dot get capturable bases. Amazing. So now we have an array of our bases, which we'll get right when our game ready's up. And what we can do is say ally AI dot initialize, and we'll pass in bases there. And oh, I wonder if we could. Interesting. Enemy AI. Hold on. Hold that thought. So previously, what I had in mind was that we would just pass in the same array to both our AIs, and the AI itself would be responsible for determining the order of that array based on this. But another thing we could do is just flip this array, like invert it when we pass it in. I think I still want to do it via the AI, because then our main scene, less logic there and more logic where it actually matters. So okay, I've talked myself out of it. Original plan, we're doing it. So we will just pass in bases here. Perfect. And then here, yeah. Okay, cool. So then when we actually have to get our first capturable base, we'll have the logic in there, like whenever we get our next one, about how to loop through the array of bases that we have. So, okay, cool. I think we've got all the basic code here. Now we can actually start wiring it up. Okay, so, you know, we could do, there's a lot of complicated logic you could add here, right? Like, if a base gets captured, like, do you go back and defend it? Do you attack the next one? Do you always go in order? But I think for just making something simple, I think what we are going to do is, like, the logic we'll have in here is always, we will always set our target for this specific team to be the first potential capturable base in order. So even if, like, this was not captured, but we had this one captured, so like say we're the green team, right? And we don't have this one captured, but we do have this one, I think we would still want to capture this one rather than pushing forward. I think we can just get rid of, or like avoid for now, a lot of that complexity by just saying whichever base is, or whichever base along the that you're looping through first that is not captured or not captured by you, just capture it. So if we own like these two bases and the enemy comes in, well, okay, bad example. There's only 3 bases, so there's not a lot of examples I can give there, but you know what I mean. So, all right, we're gonna need a function here to, let's say function get next capturable base, and this is probably the function we're gonna call. I think we're gonna have to connect a signal from our base manager of like, hey, a base was captured, to always, whenever a base is captured, to call this function to be like, okay, where should we be going now? Do we need to update our target? So we'll do this, and then we'll say for I in range. Okay, so for I in range, and let's say, so we're going to be looping through our capturable bases. So we'll say capturable bases dot size. Okay. All right, so we're going to go through each capturable base, and I know that this is just for you know, the first, like this first start order. We'll have to do last in a sec. And then, oh, we're gonna have to see like capturable bases of I dot team, right? So if I go capturable base, we have a team. Yeah. Let's class name capturable base, just so maybe we can get some better type completion here. Although this, it's just a, this isn't really typed, but so do I have to do team.team? Oh my gosh. This is a poor design decision in retrospect, but, or poor naming at least. I think the design is good. But in order to see which team our base is, and if it lines up to our team, we're actually going to need to have a team in our map AI, which I was kind of hoping we wouldn't have to do, but that's okay. So let's see, we're going to do team. We'll add a team to each of these. We'll make this first. So we might need to refactor what this looks like a little bit. So ally will be player team, and then enemy will be enemy team. But we'll see how far we can ride this one. See how well it goes. And so now that we have that, I'm gonna have to do in onReady var team. Obviously, can't call anything else now. So we'll do that, and then we can say if team.team equals capturable bases of I.team. Whoops, Timea or something. So if our team is the same as that capturable bases team, then we will return, or let's say var base equals, oh yes, typing. I love it. Cool. Okay. So I'll just do this so that we don't have to make that operation more than once, and we can get good types. Why isn't that? Oh, there we go. So we can say base.team.team. Nice. Did I? Oh, double equals. Whoopsie. Let me make sure. Do I get autocomplete for that? No. So, all right. So if the teams are the same, then we will return base.global position, because I think all we care about here, we might have to change this, but I think all we care about here is getting the target for our allies. We're trying to tell them where to go. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, okay, let's not do that. And then we can return null if we get through and there's nothing there. So return null. Okay, let's say var list of bases, and then we will say, all right, this will be range of capturable bases dot size. So this is where we're going to implement the last thing here. So if it is first, we'll say, so if base capture start order oh, this is going to be a long line, but let's just go through it. So if base capture start order equals base capture start order dot first, we do this. Else I know you can do multi-lines in Godot, but the syntax is kind of gross right now. So I think what I'm going to do, just personal preference, so I don't have to type all this out, is I'm going to say list of bases equals that, and then I'm just going to have a new line equals last. So assume base capture start order is first. So we will assume it's first, but then we do a check, and if it's last, then we'll have to flip it, and we will say list of bases actually equals a negative range. So you can actually loop through arrays in reverse order in Godot pretty easy. One way to do it is just call array.invert, but that will actually invert the array itself. So you usually don't want to do that. Well, like in this case, I guess we could do that since we're just getting, it's a returned array of the children, so it won't actually change their order. But what we can do instead is range takes 3 parameters. It takes the start, the end, or I guess the minimum, the maximum, and the step. And the maximum is always exclusive. So if we want to loop backwards, we need to start at capturable bases.size, -1. And then because it is, this maximum here is exclusive, if we put 0 here, we'll actually end at index 1, but we always want to end at index 0. So I think we need to put -1. -1, and then our step needs to be -1 too. Okay, I think this is what we need. It might be incorrect, but we'll find out in just a second. And then so here what we can say, for I in list of bases. So this loop will always be the same. We're just going to change how we're looping through it, or which range function we're using, depending on what type of start order we have. And so we want to do this right when we start. So get next capturable base. So we'll call that right away. So we load in our capturable bases, and then we get the next capturable base based on our team here. And then, okay, yeah. And so now that we have this, assuming it works, so I'll do some testing, make sure it's all good. We're then going to need to go through all of our enemies. Okay, yeah, actually, so var next base, we'll set to that. And then, yeah, okay, so if we get a base, like if we don't get null, we get an actual position, we need to go through all of our units that are part of this map AI and assign the target that they need to go to. So let me just add a function for that too real quick. So that one will be function get next capturable base. This will be func assign next capturable base to units. And this will take a base location, I think. We might change this in a bit, but for now we'll just pass in where the units are actually going. And then for let's say var units equals yeah, let's do, okay, so let's do for units in get children. So we'll get our children of our AI and go through it. Now, one thing that complicates this is that we added our team as a child of our AI. This is one of the reasons I'd like to move teams into resources. We'll get to that hopefully before the series is over. It's not a big deal. What we can just do is say if units equals team, then we can just continue. So if we hit our team unit, we just skip that one, and then otherwise we'll do actual stuff. So here we can say unit dot target. Well, we can just, you know, I'll just do or assign capturable base target here. Okay, sorry, we're doing a lot of stuff here. This is kind of complicated logic to get right, but what we can do then is say here, okay, so here, actually, let's just do here. So if base location does not equal null and base location does not equal vector 2.0. So make sure that we actually get a valid base location here. Then, or actually, I'll just do this. If it's null or it's 0, we just return. So if that's the case, we don't want to assign anything. And then what that'll let us do up here is get our next base and just pass it into assign next capturable base, next base. Okay, whoo, sorry, a lot of stuff here. I hope you've been tracking, or this hasn't been too hard to follow. But basically, we are passing in our capturable bases. We're going through to get the next one that is not owned by our team, whether it's the enemy team or just neutral. And then we are going to, when we get that, actually assign that next capturable base to our units. Yeah, that should trigger in them that like there's a new place to go. We'll actually have to add that handling, but this should be the most part of what we need to get this to work and start doing our advanced AI state once we have something to actually assign in here. And honestly, you know what, now that I think about it, I think I might actually end this video here and do a second part. This is just like, by nature, as our game keeps growing, it's going to become harder and more complex for each feature we add, especially stuff like this where there's a lot of moving pieces like AI and bases and everything. So sorry that in this part we don't have a totally complete thing that we can use and do, and that we have to break it up into 2 parts, but I think it'll be easier to kind of split it up here and, okay, we're building up our, the base structure, and then the next one we're going to actually implement the AI to move. So I'm going to end it here, I think, just so this video doesn't get too long, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or other suggestions or things that you want to ask.